Our lesson today revolves around the eight themes of history. The purpose of the eight themes is to help you build an understanding of how we interact with our society and why we continually change as people. Each theme is broken down for further understanding, and each of these themes will be applied as we move throughout the year in government. Please follow your weekly assignments to stay on pace. Geography is our first theme of the eight themes of history, and our definition: it shapes the nature of the world from which we ensure our physical survival. Different factors will produce different types of styles of human society, which includes location, place, region, movement, and human environment interaction. I suggest at this time you stop the slideshow and copy these five down. The first sublet of geography is location. And location is where something is based. It can be your house. It can be a mountain. It can be any place that you physically can go to or physically can see. When we talk about location, there are two types of location that you need to remember. The first is relative. The second is absolute. When dealing with relative location, we're using landmarks. Think of Mount Pleasant. In our town, in the center of our town, we have the Doughboy statue. That is an example of a relative location. Everybody knows what the Doughboy is. Everybody can physically see the Doughboy. You can go to the Doughboy. When giving directions, it's a great landmark because it's something you can't miss. Other things that could be used for relative location include maybe a park, so Frick Park, or maybe even Frick Hospital. When you're talking about relative, it could be the color of a house. For an example, near my house up the street is a house that this man painted that is this bright blue that you've never seen before. So again, that's a location. It's a relative location. Now, when we're dealing with absolute location, what you're dealing with is using longitude and latitude. So when we talk about longitude and latitude, something that you learned when you were probably in second or third grade is that longitude runs north to south, but it measures east to west. So imagine drawing lines north to south, but between those lines is what we're measuring. And latitude runs east to west, but measures north to south. So now put down longitude lines and then put down latitude lines. And what you have, as you can see on the slideshow here, is a grid. Using a grid gives us an exact location. Now, we have, for those of you who have smartphones or cell phones with GPS enabled, you can absolutely find where you are at any given time. And you can thank GPS, which is a triangulation using, right now, it would be using satellites in the air to give you an exact location. For me, I use a program called Hunter Mate that when I'm in the woods, it always tells me where I am. I know exactly where I am so I don't get lost. Because for me, it's easy to get lost in the woods. When we talk about putting absolute location down, it can also be your street address. So if you live at 1313 Mockingbird Lane, that's an absolute location. But if you said I live on Mockingbird Lane, that's relative if the people know the city or town that you're talking about. So when we talk about location, we also have to remember why cities and towns were developed in the first place. And most cities and towns were developed by waterways or river systems. People needed fresh water. They needed to be able to cleanse themselves, and of course, water we know is used for multitude of things, including cooking, drinking, producing the actual cleanliness that we strive to have. Our second sublet of geography is place. Now, my definition for place for you is anything that is made or named by man. So if we talk about the Allegheny Mountains, that is a place because man named them. If we talk about your house, that is a place because, of course, man made that house. If we say the moon, and this is where people get all confused and tricked up, the moon is a place because we named it the moon. And whether or not we were there or not, and that's for you to decide. As a government teacher, I have to tell you, yes, we were there. But there's so many conspiracy theories about going to the moon that you have to decide for yourself. So, a place is anything made or named by man. Our third sublet of geography is region. And your definition for a region is it has like or similar characteristics. So it could be mountains. So if we think about our region right now, we live near the Appalachian Mountains. Not everybody lives near the Appalachian Mountains. So only those people who live near there can claim that as a characteristic of the region. Lakes, rivers. If you've ever been to the city, you've been to the Ohio River, or you've seen the Ohio River, but the Ohio River is made up of the Youghiogheny and the Allegheny rivers. Those two rivers most of us have been to, or we live near, and therefore that's part of our region. Climate. Think about the four seasons we have here. Although our climate this year was pretty good, considering we haven't had a summer like this in a while. Dress. People dress. It used to be that in our cold climates we would dress for that weather. If you think about Eskimos and how they dress, um, that's how what defines a region. Our houses, believe it or not, in northeastern um, United States, we have basements, and that's not something that's found throughout the United States. Basements is a concept that is near us. Now, there's a difference between basement and cellar. Um, for those of you who have older homes, you may have a cellar. So I'm curious as to if you know the difference between a basement and a cellar. We also have weather events. So in our region, we tend to have tornadoes every so often, but in the Midwest, they have them quite frequently. People who live in the Midwest, that's part of a region of which tornadoes are born from. But if you think about things like Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, their region, it would be the hurricane region. And yes, I know we get hurricanes up this way with the weather events, but we don't get it nearly what those other states get. And probably the number one characteristic of any region is a dialect. And the dialect is the way we talk. I like to tell the story of back in the early 1990s that I went on a game show called The Price is Right. And what they do is they interview you before you go into the studio audience. And the person who was interviewing me said to me, "Why are you here? And what do you want to win, etc." And I said I really didn't want to be there, that I was the only person that would drive downtown Los Angeles. And the guy said to me, "Oh, you're from Pittsburgh. I can tell from your accent." Well, I didn't think I had an accent, but believe it or not, people in Western Pennsylvania have what they consider to be the worst accent in the United States. We tend to blend words, chop words off. We don't enunciate well. And that's something that we have to be cognizant of, but it's also something that for us, if we look at the South and they have that drawl and that dialect drawl, yo mama, what you doing? That kind of accent is something that we talk about all the time. So again, dialect would be the number one characteristic of any region. Movement is our fourth sublet of geography, and our definition for movement is going from one place to another place. Now, I do encourage you to take notes as you do watch these videos, and one of the things that you can do is pause this, and then I suggest you just keep paperless notes right there on your laptop. So have some sort of word browser open and be taking these notes as we go along here. But our movement is going from one place to another place, and you have to define movement into two different regions. Why did people move, let's say, 200 years ago? Why did they move 500 years ago? Why did they move 1,000 years ago, and etc. So again, people, hundreds of years ago moved for food. Um, they believe that the whole um, woolly mammoth was being chased by people, and that brought them over to North America. So again, you're chasing food sources. If a berry tree, if you eat everything off the berry tree, well, you got to go to the next berry tree to find food. People move for family. Sometimes you move to go near family. Sometimes some of you will move to get away from your family. If you have older brothers and sisters who are in college, some of them go to school. Believe it or not, you as well. If you're going to school and you're on a school bus or you get dropped off, you're going from your home to the school. That's movement. People do it for business or work. I drive in from Pittsburgh every day to Mount Pleasant, and of course, that's my work. So therefore, I'm moving for work. If you've ever gone on vacation anywhere, you are moving from your house to whatever point of interest that you want to see. And of course, war. The United States has been involved in a lot of wars over the history of nation. And one of the things that we have to do is we tend to take war to other countries. Um, we've had very few incidents of war here. 1940s, the Japanese, up in Alaska, but then again, Alaska wasn't. It was a territory. It wasn't exactly a state at the time. Hawaii was a territory. It wasn't a state at the time. So war. We do tend to go to war, and that would be an example of movement. Our last sublet of geography is human environment interaction. So think of it this way: it's the humans using their environment um, for their benefit, and it can also be uh, humans destroying their environment as well. So we are using our environment, but it's not always a positive interaction. So some of the things that we do, we hunt. How many of you hunt or even fish? There's an example right there. If you're out there and you use the meat of the animal, whether it's the deer or the fish, that's an example of human environment interaction. We use trees. We use trees for thousands of things. Build houses, pencils that you write with. It could be the furniture that you have. It could be for you hunters out there. It could be the gun stocks that you have. So again, trees are used for um, a multitude of uses. Minerals. You don't think of minerals a whole lot, but think about the salt. For those of you that cook or you like to eat, we put salt on our food, and those are examples of minerals that we use. Coal. For some of you, you may have a coal fired oven at home, um, or you know, you think about if you go toward, let's say, Indiana, PA, you'll see the coal furnaces out there that produce electricity. Most of those plants produce electricity, believe it or not, for New York City. It's not even for around here. And we use water. We use water for endless amounts of things, from cooking to bathing to leisure if you're a swimmer. But we can also impact our environment from overuse of things. If you think about the rainforest in South America, and we just we cut it down, and then of course it affects our climate. Global warming is, whether you believe it or not, there is something going on. Right now, we're in September, and we're facing 90-degree days. Um, if you go back to the 1930s, we overused the soil from farming, and it created the Great Dust Bowl. And of course, all that dust from the Midwest, it ended up someplace. And where did it go? Most of it went to the Atlantic Ocean. Some of it made to Europe. So the Great Dust Bowl is a great example here in the United States of how we affected our climate. And let's wrap this up right now. So, geography, folks, there are five sublets of geography. Those five sublets are location, place, region, movement, and human environment interaction. Tomorrow, we'll go over economic organization. And what you need to do now is you need to go to Schoology and you need to check your assignments to see if you have any work that is required past this video. Thank you.